I partnered with these two specifically so something like this wouldn't happen. I need symmetry. Maybe I should have listened to my father. He tried to pick out a good weapon for me, but I refused to listen to him. Stubborn! Damn it!
The world of Soul Eater revolves around Death Weapon Meister Academy, which is located somewhere in Nevada. It's a prestigious school for gifted martial artists, and it's the most secure enclave in the world since the soft apocalypse about 800 years ago. This is when Lord Death slayed the cannibalistic demon known as the Kishin. Jump to now. He's a father. Although the world had mostly ended, Lord Death proved to humanity that he was their last chance at life. This is manifested by his child, Kid Death. Kid is a little bit out of shape, high-strung, stuck-up, and pompous. He represents as a flawless chip off of his father's shoulder, but over the course of this assignment, we will discover just how true or untrue that is. High hopes and big shoes can have quite the impact on a shonen Shinigami. On to diagnostics. So, what is up with Death the Kid? Well, frankly, he has OCD, and nothing is even close. The boy tweaks whenever the slightest of dents of symmetry is noticed. He displays symptoms aligned with obsessive-compulsive behavior, notably his insistent need for symmetry. His compulsion to maintain balance is evident in various aspects, from his appearance to his fighting style. Death the Kid's meticulous obsession with symmetry aligns with the DSM's criteria for OCD in a couple of ways, most ways actually. His preoccupation with perfection leads to time-consuming rituals and distress characteristic of OCD. He needs every shot from his right pistol to be matched by a shot from his left, even if it wastes time. When villains are dressed asymmetrically, he either enters a murderous frenzy or freezes and wallows. His obsessions and compulsions with symmetry have pervasive and lasting negative impacts on his daily functioning and his personal relationships. He frequently criticizes friends for unsightly symmetry in their hair, how they're dressed. Even those he fights with are often cannon fodder for his assailants. In a clip I'm about to show you, you'll see evidence of Kid, mid-ass whooping, freezing up mid-fight in order to admire the symmetry of his enemy's garb. He then proceeds to get rocked. Fighting is literally man's job, and his obsession with compulsions about symmetry get in the way of that.
Look at the Pharaoh closely. He is perfectly symmetrical in every way.
As we saw there, he was stumbling, about to pass out, but his focus wasn't on the fight. It was on how his opponent looked, and that's not how you want to fight. And on top of his diagnosis of OCD, Death the Kid also has a comorbidity of perfectionistic personality disorder. And I'm going to show you a clip just right now that kind of exemplifies exactly what he's feeling in terms of symptomology with that.
Useless garbage. I'm a horrible, disgusting person who doesn't deserve to live another day.
Within the DSM-5, there is no specific diagnosis for perfectionism as a personality disorder. However, Death the Kid's extreme perfectionism can be considered a prominent personality trait that influences behavior in relationships. He's not able to overcome his obsession in order to assert ego-serving behaviors on a regular basis. It is easy to cast a blanket of self-absorption over him because of his upbringing, and at times he isn't grandiose, but he is just very overpowered. In contrast, Black Star serves as his foil because he abandons order and structure at all costs in order to secure messy victories that prop up his individualistic obsession with victory and supremacy. Meanwhile, Death the Kid doesn't chase grandiosity, he chases order. While the DSM-5 doesn't provide specific ideological factors for OCD or perfectionism, we can hypothesize that Death the Kid's upbringing is the son of the Lord of Shinigamis, and the expectations at Death Weapon Meister Academy contribute to the development of his obsessive-compulsive tendencies. There's so many stressors at the academy to become so many things, not least of which is son of the headmaster slash mayor slash savior of the world. Kid has to become the best Meister in his class, the perfect child, and heir to the throne, a little savior in and of himself. That would drive me insane, and at least give me OCD. It does not help that he has an asymmetrical birthmark in his hair, causing white stripes in his otherwise jet black dew. This bodily reminder of asymmetry via a birthmark is a sore subject for Kid, and it raises the classic chicken versus egg question. Did the insecurity about the birthmark cause OCD, or vice versa? Did the OCD cause the insecurity? Kid is not a normal case for a variety of reasons. The most confounding variable is definitely his high profile as a celebrity among his people and his royal status. Not to mention, he kills people that turn into demons. These aspects are important to bear in mind when treating Kid. The most important guideline to keep in mind would be HIPAA compliance. Let me explain. Everyone knows him. One slip of his name or discussion of his high-profile issues, it's going to be very recognizable and be traced back to him very easily. Bad gas travels fast in a small town. For this very same reason, it's important to examine who you would be connected with as a professional, as to avoid multiple relationships wherever possible. Of course, Death the Kid is going to be connected to a lot of people who are going to be seeking psychological services as well. You have to be mindful of these things. Another consideration would be who to call on for help. There are a myriad of things that go wrong in the Soul Eater universe. As a professional living in a city that is occasionally attacked from Kishin who eat human souls, if you were to be attacked by a Kishin, who would you have to call on? A different superhuman demigod to save your life? Question mark. When in public, we cannot initiate contact with our patients. They must address us first. If we're being mauled to death, we have to wait for Death the Kid to offer his services. It's only ethical. Now we're on to the cultural considerations. And we're talking about stimulus value in the room. Death the Kid's identity as a Shinigami introduces some important cultural elements. Now, I've used that word a few times before, but I'm going to give it a definition right now. Shinigami is a figure from Japanese folklore. It is a helper, monster, spirit that is somehow ethereal. The best way to translate it is to call it a death god. But mortality in Eastern religions, mythos, it's different than the Western conceptualization. Death isn't always the end, and it's not always bad. Be that as it may. In the DSM-5, cultural formulations encourage understanding of how cultural background influences an individual's experience of mental health symptoms. As a child, Death the Kid is subjected to a subservient, service-based role in his family. He's a child of one. His mother isn't there. I'm not sure if she even exists. But his father is running the city and being a god. He doesn't really have much time for his child. Since the story is set in a fictionalized world, based somewhere around Las Vegas but written in Japan, there are a litany of Japanese cultural influences that come through. Most prominently, the collectivistic dedication to the family and the larger community is paramount. Quite literally, it's what almost the entire story hinges upon. Kid wants to honor these expectations, certainly for his friends and the world at large, since it's teetering on the verge of another apocalypse, but he also wants to honor his father. Although they may be at ends, he still has deep respect for him. And he's trying to reconcile these two, but at what cost? This is a great tumult to Death the Kid. Furthermore, the intersection of identities. Analyzing Death the Kid's intersectional identities aligns with the DSM-5's guidance on considering cultural formulation and diagnostic assessments. Death is a kid, but he is also an assassin. But he's also estranged, and his father doesn't seem all that interested in repairing that bridge. To be honest, it seems like the only way that Death can repair the relationship with his father is to become a more deadly assassin. He doesn't talk to his father. He relies mainly on his friends, to whom he sees himself as superior in some instances. He is riddled with contradictions in terms of his identity. He's half God, half man. He's motivated by perfection, but paralyzed by it. He is drawn to order, but dysregulated by it, or the lack thereof. Soul Eater provides a nuanced portrayal of Death the Kid's psychopathology, but critical evaluation is necessary. The DSM-5 doesn't provide explicit criteria for evaluating media portrayals, but it does emphasize the importance of accurate representation in narratives that rely on mental health. It is important to see people who are like you doing important, good things for other people. This is an anime, so of course this portrayal of OCD and perfectionistic personality disorder is quite cartoonish, but at times it's rather poignant. If we disregard the dramatization of his afflictions, we can see a pretty salient representation of OCD, a common disorder, which is made palatable for a younger audience. This type of representation is incredibly important because it allows children to identify with a cool guy on screen and maybe recognize a part of themselves that they can nurture and learn to harness, rather than repress. It's a common trope among neurodivergent people that breaks my heart as a neurodivergent person. The perfectionistic personality disorder and OCD comorbidity this show pairs together and personifies with Death the Kid is nothing short of iconic. Kid, despite his flaws and bloodlust, is still a kid, albeit a neurodivergent one, working through struggles with a preoccupied father in a chaotic world. Honestly, same. Who is not going through something similar? The show is a cultural touchstone that portrays a host of DSM-5 diagnoses in an approachable manner that serves to enrich those who watch it and those who don't, because it educates, it informs, it uplifts people who do. And they go out into the world and they treat people a little bit better. This assignment deepened my understanding of applying DSM-5 criteria to fictional characters. Reflecting on Death the Kid symptoms, I considered how the DSM-5 can be a diagnostic case study, even in the realm of something so outlandish as anime. It emphasizes the importance of cultural sensitivity and ethical considerations during the diagnostic process. I watched this series as a child and fell in love. I was maybe like 12 when I first watched this. I saw myself akin to Soul. At the time, I did not recognize the importance of the presenting behaviors of Death. And to be honest, I used to hate Death the Kid, him and Krona. I still don't like Krona. But now that I have a more scholarly lens, I see that this entire work has a strong basis in psychology and to a certain degree serves as a vehicle to represent different disorders and maladies. After all, the whole premise is about Death saving the world from insanity, because the most of humanity lusted for power. I think that is a trope that we see playing out far too often in the real world. Walking away from this assignment, I've gained an appreciation for a simple fact. Keisha thought they were sane. The most insane people thought they were sane. They thought it was normal to be heartless and individualistic and lust for power. Meanwhile, Kid came to terms with his insanity. He owned it. He recognized that he wasn't like other people. The OCD was part of him. And he figured out ways to cope and harness his disorder. He found humanity in his flaws and powers in his humility. He just like me for real.